E360 TV proudly presents Messages of Inspirational Stories TV show. Live streaming now to millions of devices around the world on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook live streaming. Our shows are available video on demand on these channels. And we broadcast daily, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on these channels. On Mondays, Expanding Your Business. Tuesdays, Finding Health Naturally. Wednesdays, Mentoring Our Youth. Thursdays, Pets We Love. And on Fridays, Women in Leadership. Brought to you by our producers and hosts, Jimgrant and donnaguinouard. Along with our host, Beata Severin-Reed and Emersonbrantley. Supported by our admin team of Michaela Vidal and Gaia Guinois Balconi Leda. Ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today, and Donna's going to be with us shortly. We've had a little bit of internet connections there, and she's working on that, so she'll be with us very shortly. I'm joined today by a very good friend of ours, Mr. Marty Haggard. And let me invite Mr. Marty Haggard to the stage here. Hey, Marty, how you doing today, man?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I hear you good.
Okay, good, because I am technically ignorant, okay?
Well, brother,
my son, I would,
you're going to fit right in here because, it's just, that's normal for us, brother.
Well, I don't even know how to turn a computer on, so I'm too uneducated to be stupid. So
I hear you. Looks like we got Donna join us there, and let me see if she's able to get back in there. Donna,
much better.
That's much better. Well, let me do this here, and there we go. I had it right the first time. There we go. How are you, Donna?
I'm wonderful, Marty. How are you?
I am good. I'm getting older. And, not wiser, just older.
Well, I'm getting older at the end of the year myself. I got that big birthday coming up. Yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I tell you, you're going to hit 40 this year, aren't you, Donna?
I wish. Nah, I'm good. I love it. 56 rocks.
Amen.
That's young. That's good. That's a good age. It really is.
It rocks.
Well, Donna, I tell you, the first time we had Mr. Marty Haggard on my radio show, he made you cry.
Yes, he did.
And then we were on your radio show out in Phoenix, and he made you cry. So what's your chances today of Mr. Marty making you cry? Because he comes straight from the heart, ladies and gentlemen, straight from the heart.
I don't think I had nothing to do with that. I think that was a bunch of memories being stirred up in it.
Well, yeah. But you did the stirring, Marty.
Those were good. They were tears of joy, though.
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. I love it.
And if I may share a quick little story out of school, Marty, we were visiting with Aaron Hymas. Aaron is the president of E360 TV. He lives out there in Phoenix, and he was helping me and Donna get trained on this system. And we I don't know how the subject came up, Donna. You may recall that we were going to have Marty Haggard on the first, VIP day, and we get out there to Phoenix. And he says, wow, Marty Haggard, he says, I love his dad. I love Marty. I love their music. And he says, when you guys come out here, would you invite me over when Marty's here? And Marty, me being I'm a retarded. I got an official document that says I'm officially retarded from the government after 31 years of Master Sergeant. I pulled rank on him and I drafted him. So I want to give a shout out to Aaron. He's listening today, and he wanted me to be sure and say hello to you, Marty. His name is Aaron Hymas, Heimes.
Hello, Aaron Hymas. Maybe I get to meet you someday physically.
Oh, yeah, he would love that. He'd love to have a picture with you, an autograph, and all those good things. And Donna, I tell you, it's just a real treat for me and you to have Marty on our show, isn't it?
It is. It is. I'm excited. Every time we get together, I feel like, We're just coming home, just talking.
Just a conversation, and no need to act or put on, just talk. You know, we got enough years behind me. I ain't got to make up nothing. Just tell what happened yesterday.
Oh, I tell you, I've got you all beat in the age department. I'm 72 now, so people ask me when I'm going to retire, and I said, well, it's simple, the day before I die, because, you know, I love life and I love what I'm doing. And this little webinar series that started out, you know, message of inspiration and hope, this is what carried us to be on the E360 TV network. So I'm very blessed in that regard. And Marty, I'm wanting the people out there today to hear some of your stories. You lived with your dad when you were about 8 years of age. You started out with him traveling on the road. And what was in your mind as an 8-year-old? I mean, that had to be, to us, that's kind of like, wow. But for you being 8 years of age, that was probably just an everyday thing being with your dad, wasn't it?
That's all it ever is for a kid. And, you know, I really don't remember that much about where we went. You know, obviously we were on the road. Dad was doing live shows all over the country. You know, he in the 60s and all through the 70s. He was probably one of the hottest acts in the world at the time. And, you know, we'd go all over the country. And, you know, all I knew was I wanted to hang out with my dad. And now we'd go. And I guess I sort of remember the first time he did some live shows. I never had no concept of what we was going or leaving the house for until I got to where the first couple concerts, and all of a sudden all these people showing up, and Dad got on stage and sang. I didn't know that's what he did. I really didn't understand he was a singer. I didn't, you know, kids don't think like that. And back then there was a bunch of stuff all over the internet and TV and stuff. There wasn't none of that stuff. And I just didn't comprehend in my brain he was an entertainer. And so I didn't know what he was getting, what he did, or where. I just went out with my dad, got there, and I guess the part that made me realize it must be different than most people is at the end of the shows, he would always stop, you know, stand at the open door of the bus, and people would line up and he'd sign autographs, and I'd lean over the buddy seat of that bus and just sit there and watch him sign these pictures and take pictures, and, you know, people would say their nice little things to him, and it'd go like this for like hours, and you know, it didn't make no sense to me. How in the world these people know my dad? And but you know, eventually I grew up and got to understanding that he was an entertainer, and he would, and a darn good one. And but you know, I never did ever really see anything but my dad. You know, he's Merle Haggard, but not to me. And it didn't matter if he was the president or if he was an ex-convict. You know, when a boy sees his daddy, it's not about what my dad did. It's about who he was. He was my dad.
Absolutely.
No different than anybody else. You know, my love was, I always tell people jokingly that my wife, she loves me in spite of what I do for a living. You know, she is not impressed with my business and the music and the attention we get and stuff. She really don't like it, and I don't either, believe it or not. We're real simple people. We live in a town of 841 people, and we try not to see any of them if we don't have to. And you know, we're just real laid back, want to be alone, and but I make my living in the public eye, and you know, and by the way, I do love people. I do truly love them.
Oh yeah.
I just want most of them to leave me alone till we get to heaven. Okay. But she loves me in spite of what I do. Well, I love my dad in spite of what he did. I darn sure. I remember before I even understood the music thing, we'd go fishing and stuff like that. In my eyes, my dad was the greatest fisherman to ever draw breath. And you know, and I'd watch him real close. You know, study him when he was doing stuff. And you know, my dad he was a little guy. He was pretty small. You know, a lot smaller than people realize probably. And but in my little eyes, he was the strongest. I've seen every muscle in his arm, and you know, I just thought, boy, he's just a strong. And I thought he's the best looking man I'd ever seen. But everything about my dad was that he hung the moon, you know, and it didn't matter if he was just fishing, if he was on stage or wherever, and the love of a son, you know.
Yes.
And it don't change if you're Merle Haggard's son or if you're Elmer Fudd's son. It don't matter, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what are some of your, you know, we're coming up on Christmas time. I'm just curious, Marty, what are some of your fondest Christmas memories with your dad?
Well, my favorite one was probably our first one, to be honest. When I say first one, it was the first one that we could afford. You know, I was born 2 years after my dad was released from San Quentin prison. He was just a 21, 22-year-old kid when he got let out of prison. You know, troubled young man. But he came home. Of course, Mama, you know, she uneducated, and we were really, really, really poor. And I really didn't know what Christmas was because we never had a Christmas tree. And heck, I didn't even find out what real milk was till I was about 6. I thought it was all powdered, you know. And we were some poor people. And I remember when Dad got out of prison, that's when he decided to straighten up and started obeying the law. And that's when he started playing music around town, trying to make a couple extra dollars. And his talent took over. And it wasn't long after he got out of prison, his career took off. And they become a star. I was about 8, 9 years old when I first started going out with him on the road after he finally really broke through with some #1 records and stuff and started making really good money. And up to that point, we had never really had any. I don't remember ever having a Christmas before that. And I remember getting one thing before that. We just didn't have nothing. And but he probably felt bad. I don't know, when he finally made it, and he finally bought a really nice little place, and we all moved in there. Him and he there was a Christmas tree, and he bought all of us kids a bunch of presents. And all I remember, you know how Christmas is to kids anyway, with all the Christmas lights and presents and stuff under the tree.
Right.
My very first Christmas that I can remember was that one, and I remember to this day I had 23 gifts, and which was 23 more than I'd ever got before, and I really didn't understand what it was. And what a gift was. Anyway, opened my first present and realized there was something in there that Bonnie Owens had probably finagled out of me that I might want. Throughout the years, she'd ask, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I'm like, anyway, she ended up buying pretty much everything I ever wanted that Christmas, and boy, and it wasn't the stuff, I don't guess, but it was just we went from nothing to a bunch overnight, and went from the poor side to in my mind, the rich side of town overnight. And but guess what? My love for my dad didn't change. It didn't get better. It didn't get stronger. And I never really cared about those gifts. I do care about where they came from. They came anyway, Dad, it was just a great Christmas. First time we really got to spend a Christmas together that we could afford. And it was pretty fun.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, you talked about it, and Jim and I have talked about this, obviously, about your dad, and it's really true. When he got out of prison and started hitting the places to start singing, the little honky tonks, he went from nobody to superstardom almost overnight.
It wasn't long. He cut his first record.
Technically.
Yeah. The first record he cut in 1963 on an independent record label in Bakersfield, California. And in 1964, he was nominated for and won the New Male Vocalist of the Year award. And
that was a good year, too. That was a good year.
Yeah.
1964.
Yeah, not a bad year. I was about 6 years old at that point, roughly. And he broke through at that point, and I think it was maybe another year, at 2 at the most, that he finally had his first #1 record. And boy, he never looked back. And he took off quick. And Dad was so good and so different, so unique, and when he was young, he was just Hollywood good looking, you know. And, he was what Charlie Pride referred to as the full package. Songwriter, singer, good looking, and it all.
Oh yeah. You know, one of the things that really impresses me about your dad, you know, he came out of prison, he straightened up his life, and then he became so, you know, patriotic and so an influential persona in the United States. I love it when you say he went from the jailhouse, and where did he go in about 10 years after that?
He went from the jailhouse to the White House in 10 years. I've actually added another step to that journey.
Okay.
You know, it was 2 years. Well, not 2 years. It was just a little bit after our White House visit when President Nixon invited my dad and all of us, the whole family, spent that whole weekend at the White House. It was President Nixon's birthday, and he was born and raised in Oklahoma. President Nixon was, and he loved country music. He loved my dad, and my dad was his request for his birthday. And plus, like you said, Dad I think he was on the cover of Time magazine in 1972, and the title said Uncle Sam's favorite son. And you know, he was just a red, white, and black and blue, you know. And anyway, Nixon invited us all to go. We spent the whole weekend there, and what a interesting weekend. Well, I spent a whole day on the 3rd floor of the White House that trip. Wow. That's where the first family lives, and we spent it up there, me and my brother and sisters, and with Mrs. Nixon. And but anyway, after that, through his introduction to a lot of those DC people, and he became real close friends with George Bush. He was the vice president at the time, senior. Right. And they became buddies, and of course Reagan and my dad were buddies, but no, he wasn't vice president back then. But anyway, Dad became friends with a bunch of them politicians. Yeah. Anyway, he made friends with a couple astronauts, and in 1972, late 72, I believe it was the last time America sent an astronaut to the moon. And well, he had made friends with a couple of them astronauts, and they asked him if he would make them an album so they could listen to it on the way up to the moon. He said, "You betcha." So he cut them a custom album just for them, and they requested what songs they wanted, and he recorded those songs for them. And he gave it to them. They took it and they listened to it on the way up to the moon. When they got there, when they got out to walk on the moon, they tied that tape to the moon. So actually, I say my dad went from the jailhouse to the White House to the moon.
That's a great story. I hadn't heard that one there.
I hadn't either. That's fabulous.
I hadn't thought about that second phase of that story. It's like I keep talking about the White House like that was the end of the trip. Actually, I doubt there's been anybody other than the astronauts been on the moon, but only in America can a man go from the San Quentin to the moon.
You realize some UFO guys may stop up there and start listening to that tape and say, "Hey, we got to go down there and listen to some more good music."
That's right.
The Bible says that music calms the savage beast. Maybe at least it'll make them a friend before they get here.
I've got to ask you one question. When you were at the White House there and you were on the 3rd floor where the first family lives, I mean, was security tight with you? Was someone with you, secret service? Yeah.
See, what happened was the reason we got to go up there, because you can't go to the 3rd floor of the White House without a direct invitation by the president or his wife. And there's no getting up there. And what happened was the birthday bash, if you will, that they were having at the White House. Of course, we kids were all invited to come, and they come and they gave us a limo driver that drove us all over town, did us a great grand tour of the city, and told historical stuff, and just a wonderful time. But somewhere along the way, one of President Nixon's advisors told him, he said, Mr. President, there's going to, I don't know if you thought about this, but there's going to be some drinking at this party we're going to be going to. I just don't think it would be a good optics for these kids to be there. And they thought, you know what, that's probably right. We probably don't need to have some handful of kids running around in here with people drinking and stuff. And they felt really bad. So Mrs. Nixon said, well, let me do this to make it up to them. And she let me bring them up to the third floor of the White House, and I'll entertain them for that day before the party actually starts, so they're not left out. And so Mrs. Nixon did that. And by far, we got the better end of the deal, because I don't know anybody that's ever been. I know a lot of people that's been to the White House and with all the presidents, and heck, my dad's been there, but he's never been to the third floor of the White House. And if you ask, is there any security to get in there? I'll guarantee you right now, there ain't nobody getting on the third floor of that White House, not without a lot of dead bodies.
I hear you.
Oh, that is fabulous.
It was a beautiful place. I doubt it's a different kind of plush. It's anything to do with that president of ours. Boy, they are cared for to the nth degree. And even President Trump is quite impressed with the treatment he gets. And, there ain't nobody. I always tell people, that White House third floor, I don't know if it's Trump Tower, but it's pretty daggone good. Okay.
Oh, geez, that's a tremendous story. It really is.
It's a unique one, because I don't know anybody that's been up there other than out. I don't know anybody, and so I feel like I'm in a very small group of people that's probably ever been there, because unless you're invited by the president or his wife, you're not going up there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'd
And
never heard.
Way,
Go ahead.
by the
Donna.
way, hang on, a quick little side story of that visit. I got a brother, Noel, my youngest brother, Noel. Back then, I was about 14 when we went up there, and Noel was about 9, 10 years old. And Mrs. Nixon went in the kitchen and got us some cookies and milk. She was, in the living room. We were sitting, and she come in, and we just visited, whatever. And she gave us some cookies, and my little brother, that first bite of cookie, and one of a piece of that cookie went down the wrong pipe, right out of the box. And he started choking. He couldn't breathe. And I watched Mrs. Nixon beat my brother on the back till he just beat the yard dog out of him. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, you just can't take ignorant out of some of us.
Oh my goodness. It really is. That's really quite a story, because, of course, probably at the time when you were up there on the third floor, you didn't think it was that big of a deal, did you?
I did not realize by no stretch of the imagination what a unique opportunity it was. No, and that's the coolness of kids. Most kids, at least kids back in that day before, kids these days understand celebrityism a little quicker than we did back then. Mm-hmm. Because it's
everywhere.
You know what I mean? And, kids, when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, outside of maybe Chuck Connors on The Rifleman, or, a very few Western, cowboys, movie stars, I didn't have no heroes and all that kind of stuff. And, because you got to keep in mind also, being Merle Haggard's son, we had a lot of interesting traffic coming in and out of our house all the time.
I bet.
From politicians to entertainers to movie stars. And I got very used to seeing people into my house that I might see on TV. And I just never assist. And the one thing I learned real quick is people are still just people. And, but back when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I didn't know. I figured everybody got to go to the White House eventually. I didn't know.
Yeah, because
now
you grew
I look back and think, wow, what a unique opportunity that was.
Yeah.
Right.
You grew up and you knew Johnny Cash just as an everyday guy, not the person who performs on stage. And in fact, you were named after Marty Robbins, if I remember correctly.
I was actually an honorary pallbearer at Marty's funeral. And he and Dad were really good friends, and Dad loved his singing and loved him. And they worked a lot of shows together back in the 70s. And I got to know Marty really, really well. And during that same period of time, in fact, I would travel with Marty on his bus when we'd do shows together, and play poker with him and his band on the way to the next show or whatever. Mm-hmm. Became close with Marty. And like I said, I was asked to be an honorary pallbearer at the funeral when he passed. And then, of course, John Cash was probably, I don't know if he's my favorite, but he was such a good man and such a good friend. And Dad lived out in California when I first went to Nashville back in '85. And I think John always really admired and loved my dad. And I don't know. And plus, he was just a decent human being. And whatever reason, he felt the need or led to take me under his wing. And well, he treated me like a son. And he went to his grave with me owing him $245. I tried to pay him 100 times. He wouldn't let me do it. And he's just a good person. And yeah, Johnny Cash, you know, he's a better man than he was an artist. And he was one of the greatest artists of all time.
You know, speaking of your dad too, we got a little bit of feedback there. One of the mics, I don't know where it's coming, but anyway, just ignore that, folks. Your dad, his stage presence was just incredible because I liked what you said one time that him being a star, that image and all kind of got in his way because his true love was playing the guitar and just making music. And he sang songs and wrote songs from his real life, from his heart. Yeah. But he had that stage presence that was second to none.
I can see Donna's wanting to say something. What do you want to say, Donna?
Well, having had the honor of seeing your dad in concert, and he was much older, but the charisma was there. I mean, it was just
even on TV. You could see it on TV. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he'd just walk on the stage, and you could tell that Merle was walking on the stage just like he'd be walking into the kitchen at your house. You know.
Yes.
This
Johnny
is it.
Johnny Cash was the only other entertainer I've met that I can think of off the top of my head that had the same kind of presence. When you walked in the room, it's just like everybody's eyes went to him. John was the same thing, and Dad was that way. He and it wasn't by design. That's I tell people you can learn how to play the guitar, but you can't learn a gift. It takes you to that level. And you can if you're a good singer, you can learn how to be a better one, but you can't teach charisma. You're born with it. Trump, from what I understand, everybody I know that knows Donald Trump says that his presence when he walks into a room is unlike anything they've ever experienced. And I can see that's probably the case. He kind of commands the room. And, and sometimes you can't see it till you meet people. And, but Dad was that kind of guy, and it's a heaven thing, I believe. I believe it's a divine gift. And do they always use it for divine glory? Not always, but in some way, shape, or form, it seems like heaven is always glorified through those people. I don't know why. Well, maybe I do know why. It's through the gift he gave them.
That's right, because all the gifts we have, they come from the Senior in the sky, and they're given to us for us to use, to help others, in whatever way we can. And
the Bible says that all good gifts come from heaven, and I think that sometimes we overemphasize our responsibility to, quote, share the gift. Well, listen, if the Father gives me a gift, let's say, for instance, he gave me, my dad, or whoever, a gift for music, and we play and sing, and we enjoy. We live for that love of music, and it's the joy that we get from it. Well, guess what? We do it, and our cup runneth over, and people around us enjoy it. Now, my dad never set out to bless other people with his music,
but he did
set out to enjoy something he was given a real love for. And but in the process of enjoying the gift he was given from the Father, his gift spilled over and blessed everybody around him. So it's not. You can't make it happen. Trust me, if you have a gift given from heaven, it's going to run over your cup. It's going to bless others, whether you want it to or not.
It can't be stopped.
Yeah.
At this time, I'd like for you to share where the events are going to be coming up at in the future. And I asked Donna to go to your website and look that up. So I think Donna's got a list.
Now, we've been shut down completely since March because of COVID-19.
Right.
The last.
I'm looking at 2021, Marty.
Yeah, that'll probably change. We've had a lot of stuff on this year on the books for 2020, but about 2 weeks, a month out, they always fall out. And the last business to come back after COVID-19 is going to be the entertainment industry with live music. And I don't even want to talk about that stinking. 2020 has been a tough year.
Yes.
And on so many different levels, for a lot worse for other people than maybe even me. But this whole, I don't want to be retired, and I can't really afford to be retired. But I was forced in March to shut it down, and good, bad, right, or wrong, just the way it is. And when am I going to be able to go back to work? I don't know. And I have found out one thing. I never believed that I would like to be retired. Now I know for a fact I wouldn't like to be retired, because if I'm not doing something, I'm dangerous.
Oh yeah. Marty, when I first after I sold my manufacturing business and, wasn't retired, but, had to find something else to do. I tell people that's when I realized that my home was actually possessed, because I could be here by myself and I looked for my coffee cup and I couldn't find it. And I'm going like, well, where'd it go? And I'd go get another one. Then about 2 hours later, I would find my coffee cup out in the garage. And I don't recall being out there in the garage. So I just figured the house was possessed, brother.
No, we're not working much. We'll get back eventually, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully things will work out in here in this situation going on with the election and all that good stuff the way it needs to. And because I'm afraid that if it don't go the right way, I'm afraid that America's done. And the least of my problems is going to be what I'm doing for a living.
Yeah, I hear
really
you.
mean that.
Sure, I understand. Also, too, they credit your dad with having like 40 number one hits. And that's not really true, because there's so many more hits that were never released. The one that comes to my mind is the song that was released in 1969 in the album Okie from Muskogee, and that is Silver Wings. And that was a song.
Wings,
yeah.
Silver Wings was actually in 68.
Was it in 68? Okay.
Yeah, it was an album cut. It was never a single.
Right, right.
The reason that the reason they had him, I don't know how they come up with 42 number one records or whatever it was. That's nowhere near what he actually had. He probably had closer to 50, at least, because back in the day, you're old enough to remember, and you too, Donna. Back in the day of good music, they put out them 45 singles, and if you remember, they had an A and a B side single.
Right.
And all it was the A side was the one that the record label wanted the disc jockeys to play. And then they had one of the songs off of the album just to promote the album. And, Dad's albums were also dadgum good, that he could have chosen any one of the songs that were on it to be the single, because back in those days, they had 12 songs on every album. Nowadays, they only have like 8 to 10 songs on an album. But back then, they would pick 4 singles off each album, one for every 3 months. Every 3 months, there'd be a new single come out. And that's, so they had 4 songs to pick out of 12 songs. And that left, 8 songs that if you didn't own the album, you may not ever hear them.
Right.
But now Silver Wings was not even a B-side single. It wasn't on nothing. It was just on an album. But the song was so powerful and so good. And I still don't know for the life of me why they didn't realize they had a smash on their hands. They should have put it out as a single, because the promotion of it through the radio airplay would have made it just a solid rock hit. Right. But what I was going to say about the number one records is, but Dad would put out it was in 1969 when he put out Bonnie and Clyde, and that was the A-side single. Well, the B-side, which they called that the throwaway, it was just one they're going to add to give the listener a little insight on the album. Well, the B-side to that was Today I Started Loving You Again. Okay, which turned out the B-side of that single got nominated for Song of the Year that year. It was it's been number one 7 different times for different artists. It's been recorded 450 times now.
Wow.
Now, and long story made short, but back then, every once in a while, an artist would have a 2-sided number one record. Okay, and in the charts, it would say Bonnie and Clyde with a slash, and then Today I Started Loving You Again. So he actually had 2 number one records in one. And he probably had close to 10 of those. And so it was very common for Dad to have what they call 2-sided hits, 2-sided number one records. And but yeah, plus there was a lot of there was 3 different record charts back in the day, and Record World, Cashbox, and Billboard, and everybody tallied all the #1 records by different charts. So, but if you look at the one that everybody really believed was the best chart, which was Billboard, Dad had 50 #1 records at least. That's a long story for a very short answer.
Yeah, that's quite all right, because I remember you were telling us one time on a previous show, that your dad wrote a song specifically for Marty Robbins, and you guys were out in California, and Marty was.
Today I Start Loving You Again.
I'm sorry.
Couldn't get a hold of him.
That was Today I Start Loving You Again.
Yeah, and he was in Nashville. Marty was, and you couldn't get in hold of him, and your dad recorded that. And what was Marty's reaction on that when he told him?
Well, you know what's really neat is that Marty's released that year was Devil Woman, and so my dad, Today I Start Loving You Again, went straight to the top of the charts. Devil Woman went to the charts. They were both nominated for Song of the Year, but Marty found out later on that my dad tried to get hold of him to tell him about Today I Start Loving You Again that he had written for him, which I think Today I Start Loving You Again, I think is in the top 5 country songs of all time. That's like, the polls they do.
Yeah.
And almost Kriskristofferson said it's the greatest country song ever written. Okay. And it's the simplicity. My dad was the master of simplicity. And Marty found out about that, and he found out that was the song he had wrote for him, but he couldn't find him. So he went ahead and recorded it himself. I always tell people Marty Robbins never did forgive my dad for not finding help. Like, you gotta be kidding.
Oh man.
And you know what? I can hear it in my head. I understand why Dad probably thought Marty could sing that song. I bet you Marty would tear that thing up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I tell you, Donna, it's amazing because Marty has a strong following out there in Phoenix, and go ahead with that, please.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that Casa Grande, Phoenix, Tempe will be on your list once everything opens up.
Well, we're actually talking to our friend over in Casa Grande at the Paramount Theater, Miss Debbie Martin. She's my sister in Jesus, and we met when we first went out there to play music, and we've become closer than a brother and sister since. And as you said, we spent a couple of years out there doing a sit-down kind of gig in the theater, and made a lot of friends with all them retired folks down in that whole Arizona area, but mostly come down from Phoenix and Tempe and all that southern parts of Phoenix and of course out towards Tucson. But yeah, and I still got some of my best friends I used to play golf with every day out there. And we were just talking to Debbie. I think it was about 2-3 weeks ago. We're working on it right now to schedule us to come in there and do at least a week, maybe even 2 weeks of shows at the theater. So we will be back.
Oh yeah. I know Aaron Hymas is listening in because he's doing some work. He's got the TV going and listening in, and I know he's going, yes.
Right.
If Aaron wants to come, all he's got to do is contact you, Jim, and you let me know he's coming, and he won't even have to pay. Okay. And that way I can guarantee that he'll get his money's worth. Okay?
You're
Oh
silly.
my goodness.
You're silly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
You have a
amazing.
gorgeous voice. I've heard your brothers sing, and they sing well. But and I'm not just saying this, I'm being very truthful.
Wow.
Not only are you the spitting image of your dad, but you're the voice is yours is the closest to your dad's.
There are some similarities, I guess. I really when I hear me, I really don't hear nothing to do with my dad. Every once in a while I do, I guess. But you know what? From the outside looking in, I hope nobody's hearing what I'm hearing, because it sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. I am not running around with my chest pooched up thinking, you got this. No, I don't do that. The only reason I do it is because people seem to like it, and I don't understand. And my wife, who has wonderful taste in music, and her mama and daddy and there's some other friends around me that I really trust their judgment in music and their opinion of me. Well, you know what? Any confidence that I may appear to have in me is by proxy. Okay. It's through the people around me, because I know good and well Tessa's got great ears for music, and she says I'm like the cat's meow. So, okay, good. All right, I'm going to believe you. I don't agree with you, but I'm going to believe you.
You were talking earlier on a previous show about when you were just a boy, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, whatever, maybe younger. You were standing over on the side while your dad was on stage, and you would be singing, the same lyrics you'd be singing along with him. And that probably enabled your voice to be very close to his, and also enhanced your voice to be similar to his, I would think.
Well, there's a lot of things. The only thing my dad ever told me about singing was just be yourself, and I loved Marty Robbins, and I loved Vern Gosdin. I love Vince Gill. There's a lot of great singers out there, Neil Diamond, whoever you want to name, singers I listen to and think, man, they're really, God, I love listening to these guys sing, but there's no need for me to try to be like them.
Right.
Lefty Frizzell was one of my favorite singers, but Lefty's tone was Lefty's, but little things he would do with little tricks with his voice. I've borrowed some of that, but I've never tried to make the tone of my voice sound like somebody it's not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like living a lie. And I've been influenced by the singers on how they approach a lyric, but not how they sound. And and so basically, I try not to even listen to the singing. I try not to sing. I try to listen, shut my eyes and look at the story I'm telling, and try to tell the story. And and don't worry about how you say it. Listen about what you're saying, and how you're saying it kind of takes care of itself if you're worried more about what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It has a tendency to come more from the heart, and that's where your concentration.
And that's why I can't sing songs that don't mean something to me. And if the story's telling a story of something that matters to me in my life, I'm reliving that part of my life, and I'm telling a story, just like Dad did. He wrote his songs about his life, and he wasn't singing; he was sharing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very unique because we talked earlier about his stage presence and all, and there were a lot of stars that did not want to follow him because he was just he was just I'd like for you to expand on that a little bit, Marty.
Yeah, it more than once, Dad, back in, I think it was around 68, 67, my dad, and at that time, 68, 69, the hottest country acts in the business were probably Johnny Cash, my dad, Conway Twitty, and Charlie Pride.
Right.
And they were all four doing a package show together for like a whole tour. And the musician or artists like that all have managers, and their manager's job is to take care of their artists and all that good stuff. And some of the artists in the business always wants to close the show, because that's what the big star does. They close the show. My dad could have gave a hoot when they just put me on. I don't care when. Okay. And there was an argument going on between Johnny Cash and Conway Twitty's managers on who should close the show, on who's the hotter act. Right. And of course, Charlie Pride didn't care. My dad dang sure didn't care. But the first show out, Johnny Cash, his manager won that battle, and they decided. I think my dad told him, "John's he's been around longer than the rest of us. He needs to close this show." And anyway, they let John close that show. But my dad was third. Charlie, Conway, my dad, and then Johnny. And after that night was over, Johnny Cash went to his manager and told him, he said, "Don't you ever put me on after Merle Haggard again." He said, "Those dang people are still hollering for Merle Haggard halfway through my damn show." He said, "There's some people you just don't close for." It's over when he's done.
Yeah.
I love it. I
Coming
love
from
it.
Cash, that's a big statement because I've seen John on stage quite a few times. And boy, when he's on stage, it's hard to believe that somebody could outdo that. He's got such a presence, but apparently Dad blew it away.
Oh my goodness. That's a tremendous story, isn't it, Donna?
It really is. It really is. I never got to see Johnny Cash on stage, but obviously I got to see Merle, and I've seen a slew of other artists, and still, honestly, you know, I'm old country. I like new country, but I'm really fond of old country, and Merle takes it hands down.
You know, everybody's got their everybody's got favorites, and music is a great thing for the simple reason that whoever you individually think is the greatest, that's who is, and
Right.
Whoever I think is, and but you know, I've heard a lot of people. I know a lot of people that just love Willie Nelson, but I know some people that can't stand to hear Willie sing. You know, and I know some people that like George Jones, but I know some people that really don't like George's singing. But I've never met somebody that didn't like Merle Haggard. Okay,
Right.
now he may not be your favorite singer, but but he's in there. He's in the top 2 or 3 at least. Dad's just one of those singers that even people that might not call him their favorite singer still really like him. So, you know,
I think for me, it was honestly the diversity of his songs, Marty.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just like, you know, my wife left and my dog left and my horse left, and you know, it wasn't that. I mean, he had such a diversity and a treasure trove of songs that he could pull from.
Well, his songs were all stories about his life. And his life was no different than anybody else's life. A lot of peaks, a lot of valleys, and a lot of pain, a lot of joy. And he just wore his life on his sleeve in his songs. And every time you heard one of Dad's songs, somebody said, boy, did he write that song about me? You know, that's why in Nashville, Dad was referred to as the poet of the common man. And he just told the common man's story in a song. And I think that personally, there's a lot of things you can blame my dad's success on. I mean, you could say, well, his singing, he was a great singer or a great musician, great good looking guy. And every link in the chain is important when you have that full package like he had. Right. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're only as good as your song. And, you know, I know a lot of people think, well, Merle Haggard's so doggone good, he could have sang the phone book. No, he couldn't. No, he still had to have substance. And, you know, the Mona Lisa don't need a frame. Now, if but if you do find a frame for it, make sure that frame don't take away from the portrait. And, you know, the songs are the portrait. And Dad was a perfect frame for those portraits.
Oh, yeah. He was.
Yeah, he accented and pulled the portrait out. And there's just so many things that I think played a part in Dad's success, but it was a perfect storm in a good way, and they're all divinely influenced.
And it was the perfect timing.
Yeah. Well, again, heaven's involved, and anything perfect in this life, you know good and well, no man had nothing to do with it.
There's a couple of things I really like and admire about your dad, and that was the fact in 1969, he was not afraid to just step out and sing a song from the heart because he was sick and tired of all the nonsense he saw going on in 1969 with the anti-war. Me being a Vietnam veteran, I know a little bit about that. Yeah. But when he said, I'm Okie from Muskogee, and then the fight inside of me, he didn't care. In fact, I might mention he stomped on some big toes, but he did not care because he was.
Oh, man. You know, that Okie and fight inside of me created such a storm that the FBI had to follow us around, us kids, for like 2-3 years because there was so many threats of people threatening to kidnap us kids, and there was pickets and all kinds of anarchy at the shows, and and now it woke up that silent majority of people that I believe Donald Trump woke up. Okay, and that silent majority went dormant, but but Dad woke up that silent majority, and he spoke up on behalf of not only the veterans and the Vietnam veterans,
Right.
but he spoke up mostly for America. And but you got to keep in mind, why wouldn't he? How could he
Yes.
not? I done told you, he went from the jailhouse to the moon. You can't do that nowhere but America. You know,
And
and
that's the truth.
the power of freedom, and he experienced the glory of freedom and what it can. You know, my dad is a result of freedom, and he didn't invent that. He didn't create that. No man did. And but my whole family has benefited from the power and effect of freedom. And when somebody has a problem with America, my family's got a problem with them. Okay, because it's freedom in America that allowed me to go from powdered milk to real milk.
Right.
Yeah, it allowed you being born in a boxcar to go into the White House and that sort of thing.
Third floor.
Yeah. you know, Marty, there's one story I'd like for you to share. Well, we got time left. We got about 6 minutes left, but I'd like for you to share the story of how your dad helped Glenn Campbell with his. Oh, that's beautiful, folks. Wait till you hear this one. Marty, the mic's yours. You got to hear this, folks.
Yeah, I love Glenn Campbell. He's my friend. And yeah, you know, Glenn, he was a studio musician mostly back in the 60s. He did some stuff here and there, trying to be a singer, but mostly studio work, playing guitar and singing harmony and stuff on records. In fact, Glenn sang on every record my dad had from 65 until 72, and every record. And if you listen to those old Merle Haggard records, you hear the male harmony in the background. That's Glenn Campbell. And all of the acoustic guitar kickoffs, like on Mama Tried and Sing Me Back Home and all those classic acoustic guitar kickoffs, that's Glenn playing it. So through that work they did together when my dad's career was going, and Dad was a big star, I was there. It was on Mama Tried, 1967, when Glenn Campbell came to the studio to sing harmony on the Mama Tried record. And it was the first time I ever met Glenn. And I was just a kid, 9, 10 years old. And but Glenn came in and he did his part on Mama Tried. And afterwards, he said, Merle, he said, I got a new single. He said, I just got a new record. He said, Capitol Records signed me to a record deal. He said, but I cut this song. And he said, they put it out, but they're not really promoting it. You know, he said, and it's not doing nothing. He said, I think it's a hit. Will you listen to it and tell me what you think? My dad was like a big brother to it. And he said, sure. And I remember sitting there when he threw in the record and he played it, and it was by the time I get to Phoenix. And after he got done with it, and he asked him, Merle, what do you think? He said, Glenn, that's a smash. That is an absolute smash. He said, well, Merle, what can I do? He said, Capitol Records ain't promoting it. He said, I know you guys used to do self-promote your own records back in the older days. He said, is there anything you can do to help me? He said, absolutely. He said, I got a new record coming out. By the way, the same single. He said, I'm getting ready to ship a new single next month. He said, and he said, Capitol Records promotes my records pretty good, okay? He said, but we still go ahead and personally send out singles to each one of the radio stations in the country. You know, and I write a little handwritten note to each one of the disc jockeys or whatever. And he said, I'm releasing this new single next month. He said, you sang on them. He said, Bonnie and Clyde and Today I Start Loving You Again was the single. Mm-hmm. And he said, we're sending out. He said, bring 2,000 singles by the time I get to Phoenix down to Bakersfield. And he did. And out of our garage in Bakersfield, my dad said, what I'll do is I'll put your single in there with my single, and I'll write a little handwritten note to the disc jockeys to please give this record a chance, give it a spin and see what the people think. Merle Haggard. Of course, Dad was a pretty big star at the time, and he asked them to do something. Well, they started playing by the time I get to Phoenix. Of course, it took off like a rocket ship. And that was the beginning of the Glenn Campbell career.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I like about that is that there's a story in there for entrepreneurs, because even though your dad could have sat back and said, okay, Capitol's doing a good job, they're promoting my record, okay, I'm a star. But your dad says, no, I'm going to do it old school too. I'm not going to wait on someone else. I'm going to get up and I'm going to get myself in gear.
Yeah, if you want it done right, you need to do it yourself. And there's just something about I don't know if any other artist did that, but Dad did it, and he was already a star and everything. He didn't have to do it, but I would think that wasn't very common for an established artist to do it. I would imagine it kind of impressed those disc jockeys that he cared enough to personally do that.
Right.
Oh yeah.
You know, the disc jockeys absolutely love Merle Haggard, and of course, little things like that, aside from the music, made a difference.
Sure, sure it did. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, Donna, how would you feel if you were sitting there and you're a disc jockey and you get this little package in and it's got a handwritten note from Merle Haggard asking you to do something? What would you do?
Oh, I would have done it and wouldn't have told anybody about the handwritten note and kept that for my own self.
You know, of course, back in those days, they'd go to any area they played and they'd automatically go to the radio station and, you know, do the interviews and stuff. But I think the most neatest thing about that story is the fact that in the older days of country music, at least, the artists were really, really happy to help each other out. There was no jealousy. There was, you know, there's always room at the top. There's room at the top for as many hit records as we can have. And, you know, Glen Campbell wasn't going to hurt my dad's career, but Dad believed Glen Campbell was the most talented man he ever met. And he believed he needed to be heard. And aside from that, he was his friend. And my dad kind of helped launch a career that, by the way, the Song of the Year that year, To Death So Loving You Again, was nominated. The winner for the Song of the Year that year, by the time I get to Phoenix.
Oh, wow. That's neat. That's neat. Well, folks, we're almost out of time. We got about 30 seconds left, but I tell you right now, I've really enjoyed it, Marty, having you on the show here. Donna, what can you say about Marty? I mean, you know, you've known him and you've had him on the shows and this.
Yes. You know, Marty, you are just genuinely one of the nicest men I've ever met. And
Thank you.
And I absolutely love how we just all gel and just sit and talk. I mean, it's beautiful. Like I said, it's like old home week here.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's going to be a whole lot like heaven when we get there.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody just loves each other and just enjoys each other. And there's no need to get up, down and fight, fuss. And, well, you know what? Being nice, it's easy to be nice to you guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Same hearing. Like I've told you and Tessa, if there's anything I can do to help you guys, consider it done. It'd be my pleasure. And sir, I just want to.
$1 million,
well, what'd you say? We got a bad connection here.
His hearing's starting to go.
Yeah. What'd he say? Huh? I mean, I'm an old guy.
Man, I just ain't got time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But yeah, any way I can help you there with what you want to do with your projects, just let me know. It'd be my pleasure, my man. My pleasure.
Oh, I will, brother, and vice versa. Of course, Donna, when I come to Arizona, you're going to have to look me up. But anytime you guys need me for whatever, I'm more than happy to help. If you think I can.
When you come to Arizona, I'm bringing a whole entourage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Aaron says he's got at least 500 people he's going to bring, so he's got free tickets.
Wow.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing Aaron. Oh my goodness. Folks, we've had a wonderful time. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you so much. Marty, thank you again for being with us, my man. Appreciate you. And from my heart, too. Brother, you're just a wonderful guy. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I just want to ask the people to pray for the president.
There you go. Pray for our nation and pray for one another because we all need it.
Pray for that man. He's under attack.
Yeah. You guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. On behalf of Donna and Mr. Marty Haggard, I'm Jim Grant. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.